Steamship smoke choked the sky above a rain-drenched dock. The cold bit through coats and bonnets as immigrants shuffled down the gangplank, boots slapping against wet wood. Shouts in English, German, Russian, and Italian clashed in the misty chaos. Among them, a young woman stood still, too still for someone with nowhere to go. Elena Vetrova, 23, gripped a worn leather satchel to her chest. Her eyes, wide and haunted, scanned the port for a face she'd never seen but memorized, in her dreams. Her fingers clutched a letter, damp now with rain and desperation, a response to her ad. Willing bride, no dowry, good health, knows bread, needle, and prayer. From across the muddy street, a man approached. Jeb Hanlon, greasy beard, lazy, eye thick belt. He stopped 10 feet from her, looked her up and down like he was inspecting a sick horse. Hell no, he muttered, then louder. You're the girl? You're her? Elena nodded, eyes hopeful. Elena Vetrova. I come for Mary, he spat. Too scrawny. I didn't send for no beggar. Then he turned and walked away. She chased him 2 steps. Please, I strong, I work, I... He didn't even look back. By nightfall, the port emptied. Elena found shelter in a barn, on the edge of town, curling into a corner, rain leaking through the boards above. She whispered in Russian to the shadows, Mama, Papa, I tried. Sleep came in shivers, dreams blurred with memory. She saw her mother coughing blood, her father dragged into the snow by soldiers. Her village was nothing now, just bones and burned fields. The next morning, she tried. Kneaded dough from the last of her flour and snowmelt. Baked flatbread in the ashes of a burnt-out forge. She offered it in the marketplace, her hands shaking. The merchant gave her a penny. Tastes like sawdust. Still, she returned the next day. And the next, until the day the snow came. The blizzard blew in hard, snarling across the plains like a white devil. Elena huddled in a shawl, her fingers cracked and bleeding. She offered bread again. This time, a pack of cowboys laughed. Hey, where's your husband, darlin'? Lose him in the mail? They circled, one grabbed her satchel, another tugged at her scarf. Please, she cried, backing away. Please, I only... They laughed louder, and one reached for her. She bolted, bread scattering behind her. Her feet pounded snow, deeper and deeper into the trees. Branches whipped her face. Ice clung to her lashes. She didn't stop until she collapsed, knees to the ground, arms cradling her head. The forest swallowed her. Snow thickened. She didn't see the figure on the ridge, still as a statue wrapped in a dark coat, astride a horse that didn't snort or stomp, watching. He turned and vanished. The next morning, Elena awoke cold. Not just cold, dying. But something had changed. She was wrapped in a thick wool blanket, not hers. Her shoes placed neatly beside her. She sat up slowly and saw hoofprints in the snow leading away. No words, no note. But someone had saved her. That someone returned hours later. A wagon creaked along the forest trail, driven by a tall man in a wide hat, shoulders stiff, coat battered by time and wind. He stopped when he saw her. She stood swaying. You look half dead, he said flatly. Come on, I won't ask questions. She hesitated, then took one step, then another, until she climbed into the wagon. Her fingers clutched the blanket close. Her eyes stared at the reins in his calloused hands. No words were spoken for miles. Only wind, hooves, and silence. The horizon widened. Trees thinned. And as the wagon crested the final hill, a lonely ranch appeared in the white vastness, like a forgotten dream. Behind them, the sun slipped below the edge of the world. The ranch sat alone in a wide valley, framed by mountains and the kind of sky that always looked close to breaking open. Wind never stopped there, just changed its direction. The gate creaked as James led the wagon through, horses slow and heavy, with the cold. Elena stared at the buildings ahead, weathered, sturdy, plain, like him. The main house wasn't large, He brought her inside, boots thudding across wood floors, the smell of smoke and old leather heavy in the air. He pointed to a small room with a narrow bed and a window that rattled when the wind hit it. "I don't need a wife," he said plainly. "Just someone who doesn't complain and can bake a decent biscuit." She looked at the bed, the walls, the empty hooks where coats once hung, then nodded. "I work. I quiet," she said, voice barely above a whisper. He gave a grunt, half approval, half indifference, then walked off. She sat on the edge of the bed, the blanket still wrapped around her. It smelled of horses and pine, smoke. And for the first time since she stepped off that boat, she wasn't cold. James stood in the hallway that night, looking at the door to her room. He held a bottle in one hand and a photo in the other. A young woman stared back at him. From the frame, soft eyes, sunlit hair. His wife. The memory hit like buckshot. Her screams during childbirth, the blood-soaked sheets, the doctor's trembling hands. He'd buried them both under the willow tree out back. Never looked at that grave unless drunk or angry. Now there was another woman in that room. Not his, but breathing under the same roof. He didn't like it, but she was no trouble. She sang to the cows when she milked them, hummed strange melodies while scrubbing dishes. He caught her once mending his wife's quilt by the fire. Said nothing, just turned and walked out. They needed supplies. Spring was still far, and flour was low. He hitched the wagon and brought her with him into town. Faces turned when they walked down Main Street. Whispers floated behind them like ghosts. "That the girl from the port? Didn't she get left at the dock? Mail order whore." James ignored them. But at the saloon, Jeb was waiting. He leaned against the rail, hat tilted, drunk already. Well, look who's feeding off scraps." James didn't flinch. "Go back to your whiskey, Jeb." "She got tired of the barn, must be real desperate, Callahan. You gonna marry her too? Bury her like the last one?" The punch came fast. James didn't say a word. Jeb was on the ground, lip bleeding. No one stepped in. Elena saw it all through the window. That night she packed her things, the few she had, left the room without a sound and started toward the gate on foot. James caught her halfway to the fence. "You walk out now, you freeze," he said. "This land don't care about pride." She turned, tear-streaked face tight with shame. "I bring trouble." He shook his head. "No. You just bring eyes." She didn't speak again, just followed him back. The snow deepened the next week. It came in walls, gray and howling. Wind so sharp it sliced open lips and twisted barn doors from their hinges. James was out chopping wood when the axe glanced off the log and into his leg. He grunted, dropped to his knees. Elena dragged him inside, tore strips from an old sheet, wrapped his wound tight. She boiled snow, cleaned the blood, pressed her hand to his brow until the fever passed. When he woke that night, he found her asleep in the chair beside him, her head drooped, hands blistered from the firewood she'd hauled alone. The storm didn't let up. Then came the wolf. It broke into the barn after midnight, lured by the scent of goats. Elena woke to the screams, animal and human. She grabbed the lantern and ran, nightdress flying behind her like smoke. Inside, the wolf snarled, a black shape tearing at the pen. Goats scattered, bleeding. She screamed, waved the fire. The wolf turned, eyes glowing, lunged. James stumbled, and then, rifle in hand, half limping, he fired, missed. Elena hurled the lantern. Flames burst against the hay. The wolf backed off, retreated into the dark, and was gone. She collapsed beside James in the mud and straw, breathing in short, hot bursts. He looked at her. "You're not what I expected," he said. She didn't answer, just stared into the dark where the wolf had been. That night, by the hearth, she hummed again, a lullaby in some faraway tongue. James sat nearby, not looking, at her but not leaving either. Outside, the wind eased, and for the first time in years the house felt like it held more than ghosts. The snow gave way to thaw, and thaw gave way to spring. Streams cracked open and ran like silver veins through the land. Birds returned, the kind Elena had only seen in storybooks. The ranch no longer seemed haunted. It breathed. But not all. The signs of life were welcome. James spotted the first track by the chicken coop, wide, booted, not his. A week later, he found ashes from a campfire just over the ridge. It wasn't a drifter. Too clean. Too deliberate. He followed the tracks one dusk and found him. Mato. A tall, lean figure by the fire, silent as stone. His hair was tied back with rawhide, and his coat patched with fur and hide. He didn't stand when James approached. They didn't speak. Years ago, James had pulled Mato from a hanging tree, saved his life when a cavalry unit decided mercy was weakness. Mato had once been a warrior, but he'd refused to follow orders on a raid where innocents were to be slaughtered. For that he'd been cast out. Since then they had passed each other like shadows, neither friend nor foe. Just men who understood too much about silence. Elena saw him the next day. She stood at the gate, arms folded, watching the stranger walk the field line. "He stays?" she asked. "He doesn't ask for more than fire and sky," James said. She said nothing more, but she watched. Mato didn't say much, but he started fixing things. Fence posts were repaired, a trough unblocked. One morning, he laid a snare and caught 2 rabbits. He handed one to Elena without a word. She returned the gesture that night, placing a warm piece of bread near his fire without waking him. The next week, he showed her how to find animal trails, how to tell the day's weather from the color of clouds. Her steps grew steadier. She laughed more. Her hair no longer looked weighed down by winter. James noticed. She wasn't the girl who had huddled in the barn whispering to ghosts. She was growing into someone rooted, not running. Stronger. That was when the past came back. It happened near dusk. Elena had just brought in the goats. James was checking the fences when Jeb rode up with 2 others. Drunk, guns slung over shoulders like threats. "Evenin', Callahan," Jeb slurred. "Thought maybe you got something of mine." James reached for his rifle. One of the others raised theirs first. James froze. They tied him to a post. The house door burst open behind him. He screamed, "Elena, hide!" She did. Slipped into the root cellar beneath the pantry as boots stomped across floorboards. Glass shattered. Cabinets slammed open. One man laughed. "Nice place for a tramp." Elena waited, clutching the cellar handle like a lifeline. When the door above her creaked, she didn't breathe. Then silence. Then boots moving away. She waited 2 minutes more, then slipped out the back and into the woods. She ran. Branches scratched her arms. She didn't stop until she found the ridge where Mato always lit his fire. He was already watching. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. They moved fast. Mato handed her a small bow. She took it. They reached the house as night fell. One man was outside relieving himself by the barn. An arrow dropped him without sound. Elena crept along the side of the house, heart pounding like thunder in her ears. Inside, Jeb shouted at James, waving a pistol. "You think she wants you? You're just a broken man hiding behind pigs and prayer." James, bloodied, spat in his face. The door flew open. Mato fired, missed by inches. Gunshots rang. One struck the wall beside Elena's head. Splinters cut her cheek. She ducked, heart screaming. One bandit ran for the porch. Mato caught him with a tomahawk to the leg. He went down hard. Inside, Jeb dragged James to the floor, pressing the gun to his chest. Elena stood at the threshold. She picked up a rifle, hands shaking, her breath stilled. She fired. Jeb dropped. Silence. James lay panting, blood on his shirt, not his own. Elena lowered the gun, then dropped it, hands trembling. Mato stepped beside her, watched the man die. It was over. They buried the bodies out by the ridge. No words. No crosses. James limped back into the house. Elena washed the blood from her hands by the pump. Her eyes were dry. her jaw firm. Later, by the fire, she stared at the rifle. James sat beside her. "You did what you had to." She didn't reply. The next morning, the wind had changed. Warmer now. Softer. Elena walked the fields with Mato. He said little, but as they reached the edge of the fence line, he handed her something. A necklace. Bone and twine. The carving crude but purposeful. "Strong heart," he said in slow, careful English. She bowed her head, fingers closing around it. That night, she sat on the porch with James. The stars burned cold above them. He spoke quietly. "Could plant wheat this year. Calves'll drop come summer, maybe a good season." She listened. "You could stay," he said, voice rough. "Or you could go. Either way, you changed this place." She looked at him then. Not as a rescuer. Not as a broken man, but as someone who had seen her let her grow, not own her. Later, she took the letter from her satchel, the one she'd never mailed home, the one that begged for help. She opened the stove, tucked it into the flames, watched it curl to ash. The sky outside was clear, and for the first time it felt like hers.